For loops are a way to kind of iterate over items or elements, and we'll see what kind of items or elements. So elements of lists, but you could also iterate over items of words. You can iterate through lines and files that you want to open. So we'll see that later, for example. But for loops are a great way to just kind of go through content in a very distinct manner. And for loops in Python, compared to other programming languages, don't let you predefine, what you want to start counting with, how you want your step size to be, when to end. For loops in Python actually look a little bit different, and they kind of iterate over something that you give it, so they just kind of go through it or go over it. So we'll just see a couple of nice examples to that to really get a feel. And for loops are going to be really useful later for a lot of different things. Yeah, for loops are kind of one of the main components that you're going to be using. So we'll just go through a lot of nice examples, and then we can really see, what exactly we can do with for loops. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to create a variable called word, and we're just going to assign it the value hello. And so we've just created the string hello, and we stored it in the variable word. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to loop over this string here. So we're going to loop through the variable word. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to print out the individual letters, just to kind of get a feel of what exactly the for loop does. So for example, to indicate that I want to start the for loop, I'm going to type in the keyword for, and then I'm going to give my variable. And now this variable doesn't have to be defined before. This is just the variable that I'm creating inside the loop that is going to loop over whatever I put next to it. So right now we're just going to call this variable w, and it doesn't really matter. You can really use anything as long as you don't use word, because that would kind of be conflicting. But we can use w, and then the next thing that you do is you write the keyword in. So for loops in Python are actually for in loops, and it will become very clear in a second why it's like that. But let's just finish writing this out, and then we can go through it in detail and really understand what's going on. So we're going to be looping through word, and then so just like everything else that we had before, just like defining functions. For example, we have our colon again afterwards. So we do for w in word. So what we're going to do is our w is just going to go through the variable word. So our w is going to kind of go through this, and it's going to be every character in the string. But again, we'll really see this practically in a second, and then we can go through it one more time to really understand what's going on. And so let's just print the value of w first, and then let's run the code once just to see what happens, and then let's really go through it and understand. So we run our code, and what we see here is we see HELLO. So hello printed out, but there's a new line between each of them. And that's just because the print function kind of puts a new line at the end of each print statement. So it's print, and then it prints whatever it's in here, and then it adds a new line. So that kind of explains why all the new lines are here. But yeah, so what just happened? Well, we've created a for in loop, and what we do is we create a variable w that we're going to use that iterates through this variable. So our variable after the for is going to be the variable that we create that's going to iterate. So this is going to have all of the kind of temporary values, and the variable after the in is going to be the variable that we want to iterate through. So I mean, we also don't need to put a variable here. We could also put, for example, just the string hello here. That would also work, but we do need a variable here because this is going to be the one that iterates through everything, and this is going to have the individual values. But yeah, let's just take out hello again and put in the variable word like you had before. So what happens? Well, we do for w in word. So w is going to start, and it's going to be the first character here, h. So for w in the word, it's going to start at h, and then we're just going to print w. And now that this part of the function has completed, this part of the loop has completed, the next thing that it's going to do is it's going to take on the value e. So it had the value h, and now we've run our loop once, and now the next thing it's going to do is going to take on the value e. So we print h, then we start the loop over, and now it's going to take the second value e, and so we print e as we see here. and then the loop finishes, and then we get the value L, and we print the value L, and then the loop finishes, and then W takes on the next value L, and then we print the value L again here. Loop finishes, and then W takes on the last value O, and then we print that. And then the variable word is complete, so there are no more values for W to take on, and so we exit our loop. And you can also see kind of that we have the standard indentation here, So after every colon, we just want to indicate that everything that's going to be part of this loop is going to be indented here. And so yeah, once again, we'll just go through the structure. To indicate that we want to start a for loop, we just type the keyword for. Then we create our iterating variable, and this is going to have all of the temporary values. And it's going to iterate through the variable word, and then the colon indicates that we want to start the loop, and then everything indented after this colon is going to be inside of this for loop. So let's maybe expand this a little bit just to kind of see what happens. So let's, in addition to having our for loop, let's put an if statement in here. Let's say if our W iterator has the value E, let's print something. So if W is equal to the character E, so remember, our single equal is assignment, and our double equal checks for equality. And the if statement will execute if whatever is in here is true. So if this is the case, and then we put our colon to indicate that we want to start the if statement, and then we're going to be indented inside the if statement, which means everything that's going to be indented below is going to be part of the if statement. So if our temporary value of W is equal to the character E, let's print. And let's just print the sentence, "What a funny letter." So what's going to happen? Well, we're going to go through each character in hello, character by character. And when W has the value E, in addition to printing the value E, afterwards we're going to print "What a funny letter." So let's just kind of see this in action. So again, let's go through this. So for W in Word, well, the first value of W is H. So we go through and we print H. If H is equal to E, it's not, so we don't execute this. Okay, we finish our loop. Now we take on the next value, E, print E. If E is equal to E, yeah, it is. Okay, so now we also print "What a funny letter." And then we finish our loop, and then our W takes on the value L, and it prints it, but it doesn't go in here because L is not equal to E. And then it does that again for L, and then again for O. So let's kind of expand this one more time, and let's try to get out every single character in this string or in this word. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a list, and we're going to call it letters. And we're just going to create an empty list. So the empty list is just, open and close square brackets, and it's assigned to the variable letters. And what we're going to do at the very end of each loop is we're going to append our letter, or our temporary value, so our character, to the variable letters. So let's just kind of see this in action. Letters dot append W. So we remember from lists earlier that we can kind of add values to them. So this is kind of the structure that we're using here. But let's just run the code, and then maybe at the end what we should do is we should actually print out our list of letters, and then we'll go through it in detail and really see what happens. So we've created our variable word, which has a string hello. We've created our variable letters, which is an empty list. And now we're going to loop through it. So we're going to start for W in Word. So W is going to take on the values H, E, L, L, and O consecutively. So each loop is going to have one of these values. And so we're going to print W. So it's going to be H is the first value. if w is equal to e, so h is not equal to e, we're not going to do anything here. But because we're no longer indented, but we are still indented in the for loop, we're going to append or add the value of this variable to the end of our list. So that's what the append does, if we remember. So we're just going to add the value of the variable w, which in the first instance is h, to our list. So now our list, after the first loop, our list kind of looks like this. So that's how our list looks like right now. Now we go through it again, and now w is going to take on the value e. We're going to print the value of w, which is e. Then we're going to check, is w equal to e? Well, w is equal to e, so we're going to also print what a funny letter. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add the value of the variable w to the end of our list, to the end of our letters list. So now our list is going to look like this, e. And now we're going to go through the for loop again, and we're going to take the value L. We're going to print L. We're going to check if it's equal to E. It's not. So we're not going to do this. But we're going to add the letter L to the end of our list. So now our list looks like this. And now we go through it again, and W takes on the second L. We print L, check if L is equal to E. It's not. And now we once again add L to the back of our list. And now we go through it again, and W takes on the value O. We print O. We check if O is equal to E. We don't. It's not, so we don't do anything. And now we add O to the end of our list. And so this is how our list looks like now. And since we reached the end of word, we're not going to be looping through it anymore. So we've reached the last letter, and after that we're done. So this loop stops. And now we print our list. And so as you see here, we print each single character, H, E, L, L, O. Hello. So each single character in the word hello. Okay, cool. So this is something that we can do, which is just pretty nice. And the comment that I added here, so this doesn't get executed if I put the pound symbol here. This is really just kind of to help you follow along and stuff and to explain. But yeah, these are just comments. And I can leave these in, and maybe I'll just leave that in so that we remember for later. So the next thing we can do maybe is so we can not only loop over strings, for example, we can also loop through lists. So let's loop over the letters list that we've just created through this loop. So you remember we start off with an empty list here, and after this for loop here, our letters variable actually has the following values in it: H, E, L, L, and O, or it has the following elements. And so what we can also do is, instead of just looping over, the string and containing the variable word, we can also loop over the list. So let's do the same thing for letter. And this is going to be the name of our temporary variable in letters. Actually, let me change this here. So we're just going to call this L, so to kind of avoid confusion. So the name of our temporary variable is going to be L, and we're going to go through the list letters. So we're going to go through it element by element. So we're going to start at index 1, index 0, because in programming we start counting at 0. So we go through 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so we kind of go through here element by element. And then we have our double colon, or our colon, to indicate that we want to start our for loop. And now what we're going to do is, well, let's just kind of print the value of L again. So we're going to get similar output to our first loop up here, just now we're not going through a string, but we're going through a list that looks like this, or that looks like this. And you'll remember we created this list here by adding every single character in the word hello to our list. So one by one we add the characters. So let's see what happens. And we're going to still get our output from the loop before, because these loops are connected. So let's just kind of keep everything here. And then let's run the code and let's go through it again and really dig deep and see what happens. So we start with what we've had above, and we get, we go through the string hello, and we get H, E, and then we see that E is equal to E, so we also print what a funny letter, and then we print LLO, and at each of these steps, we add the value contained in the temporary variable W to our list, and so after looping through the whole string, we get every single character in the list, every single character in the word, and this is going to be stored in the variable letters, and we print the variable letters here. So we print our list, and now what we do is we're down here, yeah, but it's the same. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go through letters element by element. So L is going to take on the value, the first value, which is H, and it's going to print it. Then it's going to take on E, and it's going to print it. It's going to take on L, it's going to print it. It's going to take on L again, it's going to print it, and then it's going to take on O, and then it's going to print it. And then it's done, because there are no more elements, so also this loop stops. But maybe just to kind of get an even better feel for it, let's create a different variable, and let's call this one numbers, and let's just have it be a list of the first 5 numbers. So instead of just printing the same thing over, maybe let's print the numbers so that we really see what our for loop is doing in terms of lists. So let's take away letters here, and let's put in numbers. And we can keep our L value here. This is just the temporary variable, so it doesn't really matter what this is, as long as it doesn't conflict with the stuff above. And then we can just use it inside of our loop. Okay, so now let's take out the output from above. So we're just going to comment this out so that we don't see it. And this loop is actually still going to run, but it's not going to print anything because all of our print functions are commented out. The only thing it's going to do is it's actually going to add every single character still to the variable letters. But since we're not doing anything from it, we're not really going to see what's going on here. So let's just run the code and then go through it again. Yeah, so because we still have our if statement here, and we didn't actually put anything inside the if statement, we're getting an error, and that's because the if statement with a colon here means that it's expecting an if statement, so it has to have at least something in here, or else it gets confused because we're telling it, well, there's an if statement, but we don't do anything. So we should also take this out, because the indentation doesn't match. So we have an if statement, but there's nothing indented, and our program doesn't like that. So yeah, actually we can just kind of comment out the whole code to kind of avoid errors. Okay, so let's just run this one again. All right, so we start for L and numbers, and our list, or our variable numbers, is the list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we start for L and numbers, and the first value it's going to take on is index 0, so 1, print 1 here, 2, print 2, and then 3, 4, and 5, and we print each of these individually, as we see here. Okay, cool. So now we can loop both through strings as well as through lists. And so maybe let's just kind of add to our code again a little bit here, and let's print every time we get an odd number. So to check for odd numbers, we're going to do an if statement, and if L and then the modulus of L, the second modulus of L, if this value is equal to 0, so we'll go over this again. Then we're going to print L. So what does this mean? Well, the percentage operator, it looks for the remainder. So it divides L by 2, and then it gives you out the remainder. So for example, 1 modulus 2, and the remainder of this is 1. And now 2 modulus 2, so the remainder of 2 divided by 2 is 0. and 3 modulus 2, the remainder of this is 1. So we get divide 3 by 2, and we have a remainder of 1. So this is kind of what it does. It gives you a value of 0 or 1, but it gives you the remainder dividing by it. And so we can check if our remainder is 0, that means we have an even number. And if our remainder is 1, that means we have an odd number. So we can just, what we're going to do here is we're going to print out every even number. Or, well, we said before we want to print out every odd number. So let's make this 1, and then we print out every odd number. So we're going to go through for our temporary variable L in the variable's number. The variable's number is the list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And once again, you can also put the list directly here, but it's just easier to use variables. So for L in the list numbers, so value by value, if L is an odd number, so if the modulus, the modulus 2 of L is equal to 1, so if the remainder of dividing the temporary variable L by 2 is 1, then we're going to print out the value of the temporary variable L. So let's run this and then go through it again. So we've created our numbers variable with the list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we go for L in numbers. So L takes on the value 1. If 1 modulus 2 is 1, so the remainder of dividing 1 by 2 is 1. So 1 is an odd number, we print 1. Then we go through and we start a loop again, and we take on the value 2 with L. Now if the modulus or the remainder of dividing 2 by 2 is 1, well, it's not. If we divide by 2 by 2, we have a remainder of 0. So we don't go into this if statement. And now we go through it again, and we take on the value 3. Now the remainder of dividing 3 by 2 is 1. And so we print out the value of L, which is 1. And now, once again, we go through it again, and we take the value on 4 now. And if 4 divided by 2 has a remainder, which it doesn't, so dividing 4 by 2, so we can fit 2 in twice perfectly into 4, so we have a remainder of 0. So we don't execute this if statement. And now we go through it again, and our L takes on the variable 5. And now we check if 5 divided by 2, if the remainder is 1. So 5 divided by 2, well, 2 fits in 2.5 times. So our remainder is 1. So we're going to print out the value 5 again, which we see here. Okay, cool. So now we've learned how to loop through strings. We've learned how to loop through lists. What if we want to create our own kind of range of numbers? How would we do that? Well, that's also one of the really cool things that you can do, is you can create, or you can kind of go through a series of numbers using something called the range function. And let's just kind of write down a loop for that, and then let's really go through it in detail and understand what happens. So we'll comment this out here too. And we're going to start our for loop with the keyword for, and then we're going to create our kind of temporary variable, which is going to, let's this time have it be the value num, so that we don't only use one-letter variables like w and l, but let's use the value num. So for num in, and now we're going to use the range function, and I'll really show you what the range function does. So to use the range function, you type in range, and you see it changes color, so that means it's something special. And the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to put in the number 10, and then we're going to have a colon to indicate that we want to start our for loop. So what does the range function do? It, well, the range function actually has the following structure. The range function has the keyword range, and then you open the braces, and then you put in a starting value, you put in a stopping value, and you also put in the steps. And now the starting and the steps is optional, and if you don't put in a starting or a steps value, you're just going to assume that the starting value is 0, and that your steps are going to be 1, or your increments. But the value that you do have to put in here is when you want to stop. So what we've done right now is we've created a range starting at 0, going till 10, and going by increments of 1. Well, we're not actually going till 10, we're actually only going till 9. So our stopping value is not inclusive. And let's just print out the value of num right now. And then through this, we'll just run our code. We'll go through it again, but then we'll kind of have a better understanding of what exactly the range does. So we run this, and the range, you can kind of imagine, takes on or produces values starting from the start value and ending ones before the stopping value. So it's up to but not including the stopping value, and increments that we've defined. Well, we haven't defined them, so the default is 1. So we create values between 0 and 10, but not including 10. So we create the values 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And with our temporary variable, we go through these steps by step, and we take on each of these values individually. So let's just kind of do some more examples of this, because the for in and then using the range function is also very, very useful if you want to, for example, create a lot of lists of numbers and you don't want to type in all the numbers yourselves. So maybe let's do that. Let's create a list. So we're going to define a new variable, numbers, and since we've commented out before, it doesn't really matter. And we're going to just make it be an empty list. So we're going to assign the variable numbers a value of an empty list. So numbers is an empty list. And what we're going to do is to our variable numbers, we're just going to append the value of num, of our temporary variable. And then at the end, let's just print our variable numbers. And let's run our code and see what happens. But what we're going to do is we're going to create a list containing all the values from 0 up to, but not including 10. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So let's see this in action. So we've created our variable numbers, which is an empty list. We go through with a for loop. So for our temporary value num, in the range starting from 0 as a default value, because we didn't give it any value, going up to 10, in increments of 1, which is again a default value because we didn't put in any specific value here. We're going to add this value, the temporary value, to our list, and then we're going to print this value. So first we print out all the values that we see here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And since we're not printing any of this, we're not seeing any of this, but at the very end, we print the value of the variable's number, and we've created a list that contains all the values between 0 and 10, but not including 10. So this, for example, is a really easy way to make a list of a lot of numbers. So for example, you can still type in all the values 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in a list if you want to create it yourself. But maybe this would be a bit more complicated with 100. So let's say we do it with 100. Well, this is a really fast way to add the values 0 through 99 to a list without having to type it in yourself. So let's run this and see. So it's the same principle as above, but now we've added all the values between 0 and all the way up to 99 into our list. So this is kind of a really great way to create very large lists of numbers. But let's get that off the screen again. That looks kind of messy. Okay, so let's maybe play a little bit around with this a bit more. So let's create a list that contains all the odd numbers. So we're going to start now at 1. We're going to stop at 10. So we're going to take all the odd numbers between 1 and up to, but not including 10. And for it to be odd numbers, we're only going to take every second number. So that's because 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, those are all odd, and those are all, there's always one number in between them, so we have to increment in steps of 2. So let's just run the code, and then let's see what happens. So we loop through it again. So for our temporary variable num, in the range from 1 to 10 in increments of 2. So we start at 1, and we append the value of our temporary variable, which is 1 right now. So let's just write out what the number value is right now. So we start off at 1. We append 1 to the variable numbers, and then we print numbers. So we print 1. And then we go through it again, and now we increment in steps of 2. So 1 plus 2, and so our next value is going to be 3. So we append 3 again to our variable numbers. So right now we have 1 and 3, and we print it out. So we print out 3, and now we go through it again. Now for num and range, so we're still not at 10. So we increment again by 2. So our next value is going to be 5. And so we add 5 to our list, and then we print out 5. And then we increment by 2 again, and we have the value 7. And we add value the 7 to the end of our list, and we print out 7. And then we add 2 again, and we add 9 to the end of our list, and we print out 9. And now we've kind of reached the cap. We're up to but not including 10. So now our loop stops. And now we print out the values inside the variable numbers. So we print out the list that the variable numbers contains, which is all the odd numbers between 1 and 10. Okay, or up to but not including 10. So if we, for example, put 11 here, we're not going to have 11 in here because it's going to be up to but not including 11, as we see here. But now, if we put in 12, we are going to have 11 in here because it's up to but not including 12. So 11 is still up to but not including 12. Yeah, so we get 11 in here. So these are kind of just important things to kind of keep in mind, that the range is up to but not including. You know, these are just kind of little things that you may want to keep in mind. So we don't only have to use positive numbers here, we can also do negative, for example. So we can go from -1 to -12 in steps of -2. So now instead of going from 1 to 12 in steps of 2, we're going to go from -1 to -12 in steps of -2. So let's run this, and you'll notice it looks very similar to before. It's just now we start at -1, we add -1 to our list, we print out -1, then we subtract 2, so -1 minus 2, so now we're at -3, we add -3 to our list, we print out -3, then we subtract 2 again, -5, add -5 to the end of our list, print out -5, and then subtract 2 again, so -7, add -7 to the end of our list, print out -7, and then -2 again, -9, add -9 to the end of the list, print out -9, and then -2 again, so -9 minus 2, so that's -11, add -11 to the end of the list, print it out, and now since we're up to but not including 12, we've reached the end of our loop, and we're going to print out the list inside our variable numbers. So again, for example, if I make this -13, we're not going to have 13 here in the end of our list because it's up to but not including. So let's just see that. Yeah, so remember, it's always up to but not including the stopping value. Okay, so you can also play around a lot with this. You know, you can change the step size. It doesn't have to be 1 or 2. It can also be, you know, -3. You can do the same thing. And now we start at -1, and we go in increments of -3. So -1, add that to the end of the list, print out -1, and now our step size is -3, so we subtract 3. And so -1 minus 3 is -4. Add -4 to the end of our list, print it out, and then our next value is going to be -4 minus 3. So -7. Add that to the end of the list, print it out, subtract 3 from the value again, -10. Add -10 to the end of the list, print it out, and now if we minus 3 this again, we'd be at -13, but since it's up to but not including -13, we're not in the loop anymore, and so we print out our variable numbers, which contains the list here. Now, you have to make sure that the starting and stopping and the steps kind of make sense. So for example, if I put in a positive number here, it's not going to make a lot of sense because we want to create a range between -1 and -13 in steps of 3, but that range doesn't exist. That range is going to be 0. And so if we run this, we're not going to get any values because this doesn't produce any values. But for example, if we take out the negative value here, then we can once again create a range between -1 and 13 in increments of 3. And so then again, we're going to get values. So we start at -1, we add that to the end of our list, print out -1, and then we add 3 to our -1. So -1 plus 3 is 2. So we add 2, print it out, and then add 3 again. And then, we get 5, add that to the list, print it out, add 3 to our value again, which is 8, add that to the end of the list, print it out, add 3 again, which is 11, add that to the end of the list, print it out. Now if we add 3 again here, if we add 3 again here, we're going to be at 14, which is bigger than 13, or up to but not including 13, so we're at the end of our loop, and we're going to print out the value contained inside the variable numbers, which is the list from -1 up to but not including 13 in steps of 3. So -1 plus 3 is 2, plus 3 is 5, plus 3 is 8, plus 3 is 11. So for loops are really, really great. They're really powerful, They let you do a lot of stuff. They let you go through lists, as we've seen up here. They let you go through lists. They let you go through strings, so you can get out every single character. You can do functions, or you can call functions. We didn't do that, but you can also do if statements inside here, for example. You can also use the range function to create your own range of numbers that you may need for a particular situation. So there's a lot of great things that you can do with for loops, and we're going to be using them a lot later, and you're going to be using them a lot yourself in your code. So these are just really great things, and don't worry if things may seem a little bit weird right now dealing with loops and looping over the same things until you reach the end. We'll see this a lot, and we'll definitely get used to it. So yeah, these are really great things, and they'll become a core kind of component of your programming.